You have more control over your life than you've been led to believe. Not because you've discovered some secret hack or shortcut, but because the structure of your brain, the very circuits that govern focus, motivation, discipline, and identity are malleable. They're changeable. And every day, with every action, you are either strengthening or weakening them. This is not a metaphor. This is biology. Every morning you wake up, you are standing at the doorway of transformation, but most people don't walk through it. They scroll. They react. They let their mind be hijacked before they've even directed it. And here's the truth most won't tell you. Your first 10 minutes are a portal. What you see, what you say, how you breathe, that determines your state. And your state determines your choices. You do not need to feel inspired to take action. You need to take action to feel inspired. That's how your nervous system works. Your eyes are not just for seeing. They are portals to the brain, levers that adjust your arousal, your calmness, your ability to be present. When you narrow your vision, literally, you cue the brain to focus. When you expand your vision, you signal safety and calm. You can manually intervene in your biology. You are not at the mercy of emotion. You are the architect of it. Hey, understand this. Dopamine is not about pleasure. It's about pursuit. It is the molecule of more, and it responds most powerfully not to achievement, but to progress. You want to change your life? Measure progress, not perfection. Break your goals into tiny, winnable pieces. Reward the process, not just the outcome. That's how the brain wires for consistency. You will face resistance. You will be tired, distracted, doubtful. That's not a flaw. That's the signal. That's the very moment your brain is begging for new wiring. Stress, when applied with intention, is a tool for adaptation. You can use it to grow, to build, to forge resilience. If you avoid it, you atrophy. If you face it, you transform. The human brain is not fixed. It is dynamic, adaptable, and responsive to repetition. This fundamental truth is known as neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to change its structure and function based on experience and behavior. Every thought you repeat, every behavior you practice, every emotion you reinforce, they're all laying down circuitry in your brain. And the more often you engage in a particular pattern, the stronger that neural pathway becomes. In simple terms, repetition rewires you. This is not philosophical, it's biological. Neurons that fire together wire together. When you repeat an action or a thought pattern, you are encouraging specific neurons to fire in synchrony. Over time, this synchronized firing builds stronger connections, making those patterns easier to access and more automatic. If you continually focus on stress, anxiety, or self-doubt, you're not just experiencing those states, you're training your brain to default to them. On the flip side, if you consistently train focus, gratitude, or calm, you're literally shaping a brain that more easily returns to those states. But repetition isn't just about quantity, it's about intensity and attention. The brain doesn't treat all repetition equally. What you repeat with focus, emotional engagement, and conscious intention leaves a much deeper imprint than what you repeat passively. This is why practices like visualization, mindful breathing, or journaling can be so effective, not because they are mystical, but because they combine repetition with attention, which accelerates rewiring. Habits are a product of this process. A habit is nothing more than a shortcut the brain builds to save energy. When you perform an action repeatedly, especially in a consistent context, the brain begins to automate it. This is why behavior change feels hard at first. It requires deliberate effort and conscious override of older, stronger pathways. But every repetition of the new behavior weakens the old pattern and strengthens the new one. And eventually, the effort required diminishes. What was once difficult becomes default. Language is another powerful example. Your inner dialogue. The words you speak to yourself repeatedly shapes your perception, your identity, your reality. Telling yourself every day that you're not good enough, that you can't change, that life is against you, that's not harmless self-talk. That's reinforcement. You are literally practicing the mental script you will default to in moments of challenge. But the good news is, this works both ways. If you start repeating affirmations grounded in truth, ones that challenge your limitations and affirm your potential, you are writing a new script. And the more you repeat it with emotional intensity, the more your brain begins to accept it as baseline. Neuroplasticity doesn't discriminate between constructive and destructive input. It doesn't care if the pattern serves you or sabotages you. It simply builds what you repeat. This is why exposure matters. What you consume daily, content, conversations, environments, feeds the circuits of your brain. And if you're constantly exposed to negativity, fear, and distraction, that becomes your default lens. If you surround yourself with clarity, vision, and purpose, those patterns take root instead. This is also why change takes time. You are not fighting your willpower. You are contending with physical circuits built through years of repetition. They don't vanish overnight, but with consistency, you are literally resculpting the brain. And that means you can shift your identity, not by force, but by repetition. You don't become confident by hoping for it. You become confident by showing up again and again in small ways, proving to your nervous system that you are capable. That pattern repeated daily becomes who you are. So every choice you make, every pattern you engage is a vote for the kind of brain you're building. Nothing is neutral. The brain is always listening, always learning, always changing. Repetition is not just how you learn something, it's how you become something. Where you place your eyes is not just a matter of seeing, it's a direct way to control your internal state. The connection between vision and the brain is far deeper than most people realize. Visual focus doesn't just help you perceive your environment, it sets the tone for how your brain processes information, manages attention, and regulates your physiological state. This is a principle rooted in neuroscience. Your visual system is intricately tied to your state of arousal, stress response, and mental clarity. In short, where and how you look profoundly influences how you think, feel, and perform. When you narrow your gaze, what's called a focal vision, you engage the brain's circuits responsible for concentrated attention. This kind of vision activates the sympathetic nervous system, helping mobilize energy and enhance your alertness. Athletes, surgeons, snipers, anyone performing under pressure naturally use focal vision to lock in on a target. This narrowing of the visual field cues the brain to prioritize certain tasks, suppress distractions, and prepare for action. It's not just mental effort causing the focus. It's the act of focusing your eyes that feeds into mental focus. You can literally teach your brain what to pay attention to by where you direct your gaze. Conversely, when you expand your field of view, what's known as panoramic or peripheral vision, you engage a completely different network. This mode activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which promotes relaxation and a broad awareness of your surroundings. You've probably experienced this after stepping outside, gazing at a sunset, or looking out across a wide landscape. Your breathing slows, your thoughts loosen, stress softens. That's not just emotional, it's physiological. The visual system signals to your brain that you're safe, which allows the body to downshift from a high alert, stress-focused mode to a calm, open one. Most people think focus is entirely a mental effort. But the visual system offers a powerful gateway to shift your brain state without needing to use willpower alone. If you're struggling with distraction, one of the fastest ways to bring your mind back online is to physically narrow your visual field. Pick one object, look at it intently for 30 seconds, and watch how your mind follows. This simple practice cues your brain to release neuromodulators like norepinephrine and acetylcholine, chemicals that sharpen attention and suppress noise in the nervous system. You're not thinking your way into focus. You're directing your biology to support it. The opposite is also true. If you feel overwhelmed, mentally scattered, or emotionally dysregulated, expanding your gaze can regulate those stress responses. Look out at the horizon. Relax the muscles around your eyes. Let your vision soften. This sends a signal to your brain that the immediate threat is over and that it's okay to shift into a more reflective, creative, or restful state. You're using a bottom-up mechanism, starting with the body to influence the brain instead of trying to argue your way out of stress. The eyes are not passive. They are part of your brain. In fact, the retina is made of neural tissue and it connects directly to brain regions involved in decision-making, emotion regulation, and attention control. This means your visual habits shape your mental habits. People who spend most of their day looking at screens, scrolling through fast-changing images, are conditioning their brain toward shallow focus and fragmented attention. On the other hand, those who regularly engage with depth, stillness, and controlled visual focus are shaping a mind built for sustained effort and deeper awareness. This isn't about avoiding technology or chasing peace. It's about recognizing the tools already built into your biology. Your visual focus is a steering wheel. You can use it at any moment to shift how your brain processes information. You are not at the mercy of mental chaos or emotional reactivity. You have a lever in your hands, literally in your eyes, that can guide you toward clarity, calm, or intensity, depending on what the moment calls for. Learning to control your vision is learning to control your mind before any meaningful behavior can emerge. Whether it's deep focus, consistent discipline, or emotional regulation, your internal state must be aligned. State precedes behavior, always. This means your physiological and neurological condition in the moment determines the quality of action you can take. People often assume that willpower, motivation, or mindset come first. But in truth, the readiness of your body and nervous system sets the foundation for what's possible. If your state is chaotic, fatigued, or over-aroused, the best intentions and strategies will collapse under pressure. Your nervous system always speaks first. Your state is governed by factors like your level of arousal, stress hormones, brainwave activity, heart rate variability, and neuromodulator balance. These are constantly shifting, even minute to minute to minute. They determine whether you are primed for action, focused on a task, open to learning, or stuck in survival mode. If you try to force behavior in a state that isn't optimized for it, you're not only fighting an uphill battle, you're training your brain to associate that action with resistance, difficulty, and failure. So that why so many people fail to build new habits? They try to execute behaviors without tuning the instrument first. Consider what happens when someone tries to concentrate in a highly stressed state. Their body is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. The prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for logic, planning, and self-control, is impaired, while the limbic system, which handles fear and emotional reactivity, takes over, even if the person knows what they're supposed to do. Their biology won't cooperate. The same goes for trying to meditate when exhausted or having a hard conversation when emotionally triggered. The behavior you want doesn't match the state you're in. To act with consistency, you first need you can deliberately influence state through a range of bottom-up interventions. Breath work is one of the most effective. Slow nasal breathing with an elongated exhale activates the parasympathetic nervous system, shifting your body into calm awareness. This physiological change allows your higher brain systems to engage more effectively. Movement is another tool. Just 2 to 3 minutes of intense physical activity can reset your state by increasing dopamine and norepinephrine, enhancing alertness and drive. Even exposure to natural sunlight, especially early in the day, cues your circadian rhythm and boosts the neurochemistry that supports motivation and energy. This also applies to the decisions you make daily. When your state is regulated, choices that align with long-term goals feel more accessible. You don't have to force them, but when your state is dysregulated, say you're sleep deprived, over-caffeinated, or emotionally triggered, your behavior tends to reflect short-term relief, not long-term growth. That's not a flaw in character. That's a predictable consequence of your nervous system seeking safety and stability before it can engage with goals or discipline. If you want to act intentionally, you need to take care of the system that generates intention. This is why routines matter so much. The way you start your day sets your baseline state. If you wake up and immediately consume stress, social media, email, chaotic environments, you're flooding your brain with randomness and urgency. That state becomes your platform, and the rest of the day's behavior is filtered through it. But if you begin with control, light exposure, stillness, breath, movement, you anchor yourself in a regulated state that supports the behaviors you aim to sustain. Over time, this builds a kind of state literacy. You begin to feel the difference between being reactive and being ready. Trying to change behavior without addressing state is like planting seeds in frozen ground. Nothing will grow. But when you understand that state comes first, you gain leverage. You stop blaming yourself for inconsistency and start working with your biology instead of against it. The brain is designed to take instruction from the body. When the body is calm, alert, and in alignment, the mind follows. And when the mind follows, behavior becomes natural, sustainable, and even enjoyable. You don't need more discipline. You need to shift your state, and then the behavior will follow. Stress is often misunderstood. Most people label it as the villain, something to avoid, suppress, or eliminate. But stress is not inherently negative. In fact, it is one of the most powerful tools your body and mind possess. Stress is a signal, a messenger, and more importantly, a catalyst for adaptation. When used with awareness and precision, it becomes a form of biological intelligence, preparing you to grow, focus, and meet the demands of life with greater resilience. The key lies not in avoiding stress, but in understanding how to engage with it, channel it, and recover from it. At its core, stress is your body's response to challenge. It begins in the brain, particularly the hypothalamus, which sends signals to release adrenaline and cortisol. Flow. These hormones mobilize energy, sharpen awareness, increase heart rate, and prime the muscles. In short bursts, this response is not only useful, it's essential. It's what allows you to concentrate intensely, perform under pressure, and respond to complex or dangerous. The problem arises when stress becomes chronic, unmanaged, or disconnected from purpose. But that doesn't mean stress itself is harmful. It means the relationship you have with stress determines whether it builds you up or breaks you down. One of the most powerful insights from neuroscience is that the same mechanisms that stress the body also grow it. This applies not only to muscles under resistance, but to the brain as well. When you encounter a mentally or emotionally demanding situation and stay with it, rather than running from it, you activate neuroplastic changes that increase your capacity to handle future stress. This is how growth occurs. Stress, when followed by deliberate recovery, is the stimulus that forges stronger systems. It's the repetition of stress recovery cycles that makes you more capable, more focused, and more emotionally stable. There is even a term for productive stress. Eustress. This is the type of stress that arises when you're pursuing something meaningful, stretching beyond your current capacity, or facing a challenge with a sense of purpose. Eustress can sharpen your thinking, enhance your creativity, and drive you to perform at levels you didn't know were possible. The key difference between eustress and distress is perception. If you interpret a challenge as something you can face, even if it's uncomfortable, your body reacts with energy and focus. If you interpret the same challenge as overwhelming and out of your control, it becomes toxic and debilitating. Your mindset about stress matters. Studies show that people who view stress as enhancing, who believe it can improve performance, build resilience, or deepen meaning, experience fewer negative health effects and recover faster. Their physiology adapts differently. Heart rate returns to baseline sooner. Cortisol levels stabilize more quickly. The brain even processes the stressful event in a way that supports learning rather than trauma. This means your attitude towards stress doesn't just color your experience, it shapes your biology. Instead of asking how to eliminate stress, a more powerful question is, it also encourages you to create intentional recovery, because it's not just about pushing through stress, it's about balancing it. Stress without recovery leads to burnout, but recovery without stress leads to stagnation. The dynamic tension between the two is where growth happens. When stress shows up, it's not a failure, it's a signal that you're on the edge of something important. Lean into it with structure, use breath to calm your body. Use movement to process excess energy. Use reflection to extract meaning, and then step forward again. The more skilled you become at interpreting and using stress, the more capable you become of handling complexity, adversity, and change. Stress is not your enemy. It is your training ground. Dopamine is far more than a chemical associated with pleasure. It is a molecule that governs motivation, anticipation, pursuit, and most importantly, direction. It is the biological engine that propels you toward goals, compels you to act, and sustains you through challenge. Without dopamine, you would have the desire for nothing, the energy for nothing, and the drive for nothing. It does not spike when you receive a reward, but rather when you are moving toward one. This distinction is critical. Dopamine is not about achievement, it's about pursuit. This neurochemical sets the tone for how you assign value. When dopamine is released, the brain takes notice. It says, this matters, pay attention, move toward this again. It shapes what you are drawn to and reinforces the behaviors that bring you closer to meaningful outcomes. Whether it's learning a new skill, building a business, or overcoming an obstacle, the presence of dopamine makes the process feel worthwhile, even exciting. The direction you pursue in life is largely shaped by what your brain has learned to attach dopamine to. But here's where many people go wrong. They chase short-term spikes, quick hits from social media, junk food, endless scrolling. These things are designed to hijack your dopamine system, creating bursts of reward without requiring effort. Over time, the brain learns to expect instant gratification. This conditions the nervous system to avoid anything that requires delay, effort, or discomfort. The long-term result is a loss of direction. Life becomes a series of small dopamine loops with no depth, no growth, and no resilience. You can retrain this system by shifting where and how you associate dopamine. If you learn to attach dopamine not just to outcomes, but to the process itself, each step, each moment of effort, each act of consistency, you begin to reshape your brain. You start to feel a sense of internal reward, not just when you finish something, but while you're doing it. This is the hallmark of people who achieve at high levels. They have taught their nervous system to crave the path, not just the prize. This also explains why adversity can become energizing. If you believe that struggle is meaningful, if you frame discomfort as progress, your brain will release dopamine even in hard moments. That release becomes a message. Keep going. This is valuable. You are changing. The key is to create a feedback loop where effort itself becomes the reward. This doesn't happen passively. It must be trained. Each time you notice progress, no matter how small, and you mentally acknowledge it, you reinforce that loop. The brain starts to connect challenge with positive internal states, and you become more likely to continue. Dopamine is also tightly linked with anticipation. The moment you set a goal and visualize its fulfillment, dopamine begins to rise. This is what makes vision practices so powerful. By vividly imagining the outcome and emotionally connecting with it, you prime your brain to begin releasing dopamine, effectively pulling you toward the goal before you've even taken action. But if that vision is not followed by steps, structure, or consistency, the dopamine fades. It must be linked to movement, to progress, to action. That's what sustains direction. It's important to know that dopamine has a baseline. If you constantly spike it through artificial means, the baseline drops. Then normal life begins to feel dull. Motivation fades. You feel lost, directionless, or indifferent. This isn't depression, it's depletion. The solution is not more stimulation, it's recalibration. Step away from instant gratification. Reintroduce challenge, restore balance, and rebuild your capacity to feel reward in effort. Dopamine drives direction, but it needs to be guided. If you train it toward what is meaningful, if you link it to purpose, to daily structure, and to growth, it becomes a compass. It tells you what to pursue, what to prioritize, and where to apply your energy. This is not just chemistry. It is destiny shaped by intention. What you do in the first 30 to 60 minutes of your morning has a disproportionate impact on how the rest of your day unfolds. Two of the most powerful levers you can use to set the tone for energy, focus, and emotional resilience are exposure to natural morning light and deliberate physical movement. Light. These are not just habits of productive people. They are deeply rooted biological anchors that tune your circadian rhythm, regulate your mood, and optimize your brain's ability to function throughout the day. Morning light and movement are not luxuries. They are foundational. When your eyes are exposed to natural sunlight within the first hour of waking, a series of chemical cascades begin that affect nearly every system in your body. Light enters the eyes, not just any light, but full spectrum sunlight, and reaches the suprachiasmatic nucleus in the hypothalamus. This area is the master clock of your body, regulating your sleep-wake cycle and synchronizing other clocks in your brain, organs, and tissues. Light at this time signals the brain that the day has begun, and it triggers the timed release of cortisol, which increases alertness and primes you for movement, focus, and cognitive function. Importantly, this early cortisol pulse is not the same as stress-related cortisol. It's natural, beneficial, and necessary. It sets the tone for a healthy rhythm of alertness during the day and restful sleep at night. Missing morning light, especially over days or weeks, dysregulates this rhythm. Without that early light input, your brain remains in a state of uncertainty about what time it is, leading to fatigue, poor focus, irritability, and difficulty falling asleep at night. Artificial indoor lighting is not enough. The intensity of sunlight, even on cloudy days, far exceeds the light indoors. Just 10 to 20 minutes outside in the morning has a dramatic effect on your physiology. Pairing this with movement, magnifies the effect. Movement increases body temperature, which is a strong cue to the brain that the waking day is underway. This rise in core temperature works synergistically with the cortisol pulse to activate brain regions responsible for attention, executive function, and memory. Even light movement, such as walking, stretching, or a few minutes of bodyweight exercises, can initiate this shift. The key is to move deliberately, not aimlessly. When you combine movement with purpose and presence, you reinforce the signal that your brain and body are preparing to engage with the world. Movement also increases dopamine and norepinephrine, two neuromodulators that sharpen motivation and focus. The result is a brain that's more alert, more driven, and more capable of filtering out distraction. This gives you a biochemical advantage, not through caffeine or stimulants, but through the natural design of your system. Movement becomes a form of tuning, a way to prepare your internal instruments for the day's challenges. When you begin your day with movement, you're not just burning calories or warming up muscles. You're activating a biological engine that propels your day forward. These practices also buffer you against stress. When you start your morning anchored in light and movement, you create stability in your nervous system. That stability becomes resilience. Stressful inputs later in the day don't hit as hard because your internal state has already been calibrated. You're not reactive, you're centered. Your emotional regulation improves, your tolerance for challenge expands, the body remembers how the day began, and it leans on that memory as a template for how to respond when things get hard. There is wisdom in the rhythm of nature. Morning light and movement are not hacks or trends. They are ancient signals built into your biology that tell your system how to function optimally. When you align yourself with these signals, you don't just feel better, you operate with greater clarity, vitality, and intention. These small acts of discipline in the morning compound over time into a nervous system and a mindset built for presence, productivity, and peace. Discipline is often misunderstood as a trait that some people are born with and others simply lack. But that belief is not rooted in biology. In truth, discipline is not about raw willpower or constant motivation. It is a neurochemical process, a trained capacity of the brain and nervous system to create and reinforce patterns of behavior. Discipline is built through repetition, structure, and specific engagement with the chemicals that govern focus, reward, and habit formation. When you understand this, discipline becomes something you can cultivate rather than something you chase or feel ashamed for lacking. Motivation is fleeting. It comes and goes based on external conditions, emotional states, or unpredictable stimuli. Neurochemically, motivation is a transient surge of dopamine or norepinephrine in response to something novel, exciting, or emotionally charged. But these bursts fade. They are not dependable. They cannot carry you through resistance or fatigue. Discipline, by contrast, is what allows you to act in the absence of motivation. It's not about how you feel. It's about how your system is wired to behave, even when you don't want to. Discipline is the result of repeated engagement with the prefrontal cortex, the area of the brain responsible for planning, decision-making, and impulse control. Every time you override a distraction, resist a temptation, or follow through on a task despite discomfort, you strengthen the neural circuitry that supports discipline. This is not theoretical. Physical. Axons thicken. Synaptic connections become more efficient. Over time, it becomes easier to make the right choice because your brain has been rewired to prefer it. This process is guided by specific neuromodulators. Dopamine is central, not because it rewards you for completing a task, but because it reinforces the behavior that led to the task being initiated in the first place. When you attach a sense of meaning or purpose to the effort itself, dopamine is released not at the end, but throughout the process. This makes consistency feel internally rewarding, not externally forced. You begin to crave progress instead of just outcomes. That's how discipline becomes sustainable. It's fueled from within by neurochemistry trained to support forward action. Norepinephrine is another key player. It enhances focus and suppresses irrelevant stimuli. It helps you lock in even when the environment is full of distractions. When you start a task and push through the initial resistance, norepinephrine increases, sharpening your cognitive abilities and helping you enter a deeper state of engagement. These are not abstract mental shifts. They are chemical processes designed to support goal-directed behavior. The more often you push through that initial friction point, the more efficiently your brain learns to produce the chemistry needed to sustain discipline. But this chemistry must be trained. You don't wait for it. You create it. The brain responds to cues, patterns, and structure. When you wake up at the same time, begin your work with a consistent ritual or train your body at regular intervals. You are giving your nervous system predictability. That predictability reduces cognitive load, making it easier to engage with challenging tasks without needing a surge of motivation each time. This is how elite performers operate, not from constant inspiration, but from built-in systems that automate discipline through repetition and neuroplasticity. Sleep, nutrition, and light exposure also play crucial roles. Poor sleep depletes dopamine and impairs prefrontal cortex function, making discipline harder to access. Skipping movement or avoiding sunlight dysregulates your circadian rhythm, which affects attention and mood. These foundational behaviors are not optional. They are the raw materials from which discipline is built. You're not lazy when you struggle to focus. You're likely running low on the very chemistry your brain needs to execute discipline. Discipline is not mystical. It is not a character trait reserved for the few. It is biology shaped through conscious action and reinforced by neurochemical feedback loop. When you understand and work with the mechanisms that govern attention, action, and reward, you realize that discipline isn't something you wait for. It's something you build moment by moment, repetition by repetition, from the inside out. So if you've been waiting for motivation to show up before you act, stop. The truth is, motivation may light the match, but it's discipline built through biology, repetition, and intention that keeps the fire burning. You are not broken or uncommitted. You've just been operating without understanding the system you were born with. Your brain isn't the obstacle. It's the tool. Discipline is not a gift. It's a signal you can train, a chemistry you can shape, and a structure you can build. Every time you show up when it's hard, when it's boring, when it's uncomfortable, you're not just getting stronger. You're becoming someone who doesn't need to feel ready to move forward. You're proving to your brain that direction matters more than emotion. That's power. That's freedom. And that's how your life begins to change from the inside out.